Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition Rufus Rundown podcast. I welcome Joe Cabral and Chris Santos for our 2021 mock draft special. We're at the Chris Santos studios. As you can see, the various attire of sporting memorabilia, and that's just the beginning of a lot of it, but much, really like the Nature Boy robe there, Chris.
Thank you very much. It's one of my prized possessions I have here in the man cave with a lot of other things. But today it's about football, and just a month away, right around the corner, a couple of weeks actually, is the 2021 mock draft, and should be a good one, Joe, because a lot of quarterbacks come to mind and wide receivers come to mind. It's that kind of offensive mentality, I think, from these teams. So you have to think a lot of good teams juggling for position to try to get up in the draft, which some teams have already done in the last week or so. And I expect to see maybe some more come draft day.
Yeah, a lot of movement here regarding the 2021 draft and quarterbacks, the story. Only twice in the history of the NFL draft have 3 quarterbacks been taken with the first 3 picks in 1999 and then back in the 70s. It doesn't happen all the time. It's going to happen here in 2021 since the 49ers have traded up to the 3rd pick. And a lot are speculating, a lot of the prognosticators are speculating that in the top 10 you could have the 5 top quarterbacks selected in those top 10 picks. And so don't be surprised if those first 10, especially Chris, as you mentioned, those first 10 picks are heavily offensive leaning because of the wide receivers. Another great group of wide receivers in 2021 to go with the quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's going to certainly be interesting. Right as it was starting to kind of dull, I think, the draft talk, where everybody kind of thought they had it figured out, and then a lot of Patriots talk radio, 98.5 and such, was more locked in on, will Mac Jones fall and whatnot, and then all of a sudden this trade comes up where Jimmy Garoppolo might become available, so sparked a lot of the interest people who they're going to take at 3, because it's almost a guarantee that Lawrence and Wilson go 2. So, obviously it creates a lot of fun for people like us to be able to talk about it. And just the way the draft's loaded, you have to think about it, specifically quarterbacks. How many quarterbacks get, you take 1 or 2 in the first round normally. How many of those guys actually hit normally? I mean, you look at the NFL the way it's positioned now. Joe Burrow got hurt. Herbert looks like he's the real deal. Josh Allen's really come into his own. Lamar Jackson was at the tail end of the first round, but Mahomes is a world-class talent. But then there's also the other guys. There's the Drew Locks in the second round. There's the, in recent history, you have guys like Mitchell Trubisky that don't pan out, passing on Deshaun Watson. So with that many quarterbacks going early, there's going to be a lot of goats, but there's the chance of 1 or 2 of those guys really working out. And more specifically, you think Trevor Lawrence is pretty much the slam dunk at 1. And a slam dunk to succeed, one of the best prospects we've seen since Andrew Luck coming out of college. Who's that other guy that you think out of that group can really, progress to be a marquee quarterback for an NFL franchise, and who's going to be lucky enough to take that guy behind Trevor Lawrence?
And I think one of the things that happens a lot, especially with quarterbacks, guys, is teams reach. So we see it all the time. E.J. Manuel, teams look and say, we really need a quarterback, and they look at their big board and maybe he's 20 picks lower, and they just say, well, and they reach for a quarterback. And I think here in 2021, I don't think that's going to be the case, simply because the 5 guys at the top are pretty much the consensus picks. And as you were saying, Lucas, Mac Jones was thought of as not getting past 15, and now he's probably the number 3 overall pick. So teams do need quarterbacks, and you can see in the NFL today, especially with cost control. So the way they've changed the draft system, and now early round quarterbacks are not as cost prohibitive as they used to be, like a Sam Bradford. Think of how much money Sam Bradford made as the first overall pick, and really didn't do much.
And it's a lot more interesting too, is because there was no combine this year really
just
go
pro
by.
Days.
And so just the pro days, and that has been going on for the last 2 weeks, and we saw a lot of it. And when you're talking about quarterbacks, you're talking about the position of the NFL. That's the way it's going, and that's what teams want. And they're sitting there saying, We don't have it. We got to find a way to get there because we have the other pieces to the puzzle, but we need someone to lead us. And I think that's why it's been so big recently in the NFL to really stretch out and say, hey, it's our turn to get a quarterback. Whether you're reaching or not, they think they can make it. And as Lucas said, some will do it, and unfortunately, some might be a bust.
Yeah, it doesn't, obviously, when you're going into the draft, everyone's great.
Yeah, everyone's good.
You've got the measurables, you've got, what they did in college, and then, the NFL, it's a totally different game. Sam Darnold, for example.
And I still think he has a lot to prove, regardless of where he goes to. I still think there's a ceiling with him that he's yet to even come close to touching. I mean, you look at a guy like DK Metcalf, who the measurables were incredible, but that first season he really didn't do much, and then he didn't come into his own until that second, third season is really that timeline. So, people determine people to be bust so quickly, and then some people are so good right off the bat, like Lamar Jackson being MVP and then really falling off last year. So who's going to be able to find that most consistency as well, especially considering the NFL where, like you said, the cost effectiveness of having a young quarterback who can run your team. The Chiefs winning that Super Bowl with Mahomes on a rookie deal still before he re-signs.
Yeah, now we got to watch going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, a classic example is Deshaun Watson. Aside from any issues that are currently going on with Deshaun, he is, he's an expensive quarterback to have on your roster. For all his greatness, last year they won 4 games. So team building football is still the ultimate team game.
Yep.
And team building, and I think one of the things you're going to start seeing, and hopefully teams are learning it, is you either have a rookie quarterback on that rookie deal that's inexpensive. Maybe you have a star, and if you have a star, okay. But when you start to pay those middle-of-the-road quarterbacks, the Kirk Cousins, like they're stars, you now restrict the rest of your roster and what you can do with the rest of your roster. And teams have to start getting smarter with that. And that's the same thing that, the Rams had to do here recently. They had to get rid of a guy that they overpaid too soon, very similar to, the Kirk Cousins deal. And you end up where you start to lose players and your roster is not evenly balanced. So that's one of the advantages the Patriots have, for example, here in 2021.
Well, hey, look, we're all Mel Kipers right now. So
everyone, there's no wrong picks.
There's no wrong, there's no right.
point.
We're here to give what we think could happen. Some of us might be the same. Some of us might be different. But that's why they have the draft. And hey, let's get on the way with the first one with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And I'd have to go with Trevor. I'd have to go with Trevor Lawrence. I don't think there's anybody out here that's not going to go with Trevor Lawrence at one. I'm sure you guys.
Unless your name is Chris Sims. So Chris Sims did say he liked Zach Wilson better than Trevor Lawrence. But other than that, I mean, the measurables are unreal. Mm-hmm. I mean, 6'6", 220 pounds. He's running offense, since he was a freshman at the highest level at Clemson. So I could not disagree with that, Lucas.
Yeah, it's a consensus here. He's probably been going on for almost a year and a half now as being the number 1 pick when he finally makes it there. This is his time. He'll showcase, and there's no doubt he'll be the number 1 pick. So that's an easy one, I think, for everybody here.
The long hair, the pretty face, the big guy, the quarterback. My one worry with him is that he has never really played well from behind through high school and college, which is something that he should really get used to when playing in Jacksonville. But other than that, he's a slam dunk, and I'm sure that working under Urban Meyer and a guy that's going to be, pretty strict on some of those players and coming from a similar college system, he's going to be able to adapt very well to the system.
Yeah, fortunately, he has, someone who you have to project to be a very good coach in the NFL, despite coming from the college game. And you really need that because many a quarterback has been ruined, and Sam Darnold comes to mind here. And one of the advantages the Jaguars have, they have a lot of money to spend still. They were well under the cap. They were the top team under the salary cap, so they can bring in receivers and they can build around him. And that's extremely important because if you look at Darnold with the Jets, for example, again, didn't have the receivers, bad offensive line, starts to struggle, really is not played well over his first 3 years. Going into his 4th year now, you got to make a determination regarding do you take the option year at $18 million, and that's where the Jets are, and that's why they're stuck, and that's why everyone says the number 2 pick is going to be
Zach Wilson. And so I think it'll be Zach Wilson as well. I don't know if you guys agree that it will also be Zach Wilson. I guess the question that if everybody, we have a consensus that Zach Wilson is going to be the number 2 overall pick. The question becomes: do they hang Darnold around, and do they try and groom Wilson behind Darnold? Do they have a competition to try and get more out of both of them, or do they flip Darnold somewhere?
Well, 6'3", 210, very impressive pro day, Joe. Really could show what he could do, and a lot of scouts were saying this kid's the real deal. Strong arm, good vision. Yeah, BYU, maybe not one of the strongest teams in college and schedule-wise, so forth. But he has the intangibles, and I think the big intangible is how do you fit in New York? That's the key. How do you fit with Adam Gase and who's ever running that team, and how they're going to work, and how they're going to figure out what's best for Zach Wilson? Or is he going to turn into another Sam Darnold and not be able to produce when you don't have that offensive line or those wide receivers, and you try to figure out and try to do too much. So, yeah, it's going to be a learning curve for him, but I definitely think he's the way to go at number 2, and I expect the Jets to jump on him.
Yeah, and I think his pro day where he made that crazy throw, rolling to his left and throwing the ball 65 yards downfield with a flick of the wrist, reminding you of an Aaron Rodgers type of throw, and with Robert Saleh there now as the new head coach, probably going to be hopefully a little bit smarter than what they've done with Sam Darnold in the past, and kind of manage the expectations a little bit, give them some good easy throws. They're in a good position with all of their first round picks. They have 2 this year and 2 next year, so they can really build up around him. And I think to your point, Lucas, on Sam Darnold, yeah, they're going to move him. I mean, there's no way you're going to keep him on the roster and then basically at the end of the year you're not going to pick up that option year, so you're going to lose him for nothing. So I think right now it's just a matter they're holding off to see what happens with some of these other teams. Carolina, probably not the Patriots because they're in the same division. Maybe even the Bears, another team who shows some interest and says, I'll give you a number 2 overall, a number 2 pick. Mm-hmm. I think he will get dealt, and probably right at the draft.
Yeah,
guess.
I'd have to say that Wilson's set to have a little more success there than a Gase run offense, because Mike LaFleur's there, and we know how Matt LaFleur likes to run that run-heavy offense with mobile-style quarterbacks. Well, he's had success with quarterbacks. LaFleur,
a lot of play action.
Yeah, I feel that LaFleur, and having a defensive head coach that's going to build up a defense and have a strong core on that defensive side of the football, with a coach that knows how to run the football and manage games at least until the fourth quarter with leads in that sense, coming from under the Matt LaFleur system and such, and under Shanahan. I think Wilson's set up to have a lot more success than Sam Darnold ever did when he was with the Jets.
Yeah, I mean the play action system run in the kind of the Shanahan scheme is very favorable to younger quarterbacks, and it allows you to have open throws, which in the NFL that's the biggest change for a lot of these guys, especially guys like maybe some of the guys at the better schools. Justin Fields is dropping quite a bit here now, because what happens is their talent is so great. Alabama, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. So I mean they're open, and in the NFL it just doesn't work that way. The windows are tighter. The timing, get rid of the ball. You have to do it, and you have to anticipate a lot more in the NFL. And so that's what a guy like Zach Wilson. He has smaller school guys, but also didn't have the talent around him, so he had to, make a lot of plays. And
things are quicker, things are faster.
And tight windows are tight windows,
they
regardless if they're in college or in the bigger programs. Sometimes they're not that tight. Those windows are guys are wide open.
A lot of the talent, you do note that they don't. In college, you're not going to run a lot of 10-yard deep outs, because if you can run a 10-yard, if you have time to run a 10-yard deep out, most of the time your athletes at wide receiver are going to be able to be 20 yards downfield and behind most of the corners at those other schools. The NFL, every corner is at that same peak level. Never mind when you run into an all-pro and such. And those 10-yard deep out throws that they talk about, those hard hitters and those tight windows are the throws that you have to make, and not just make every once in a while, but consistently make to stay, 65%, 70% completion percentage and stay an NFL quarterback.
And guys, I think that brings us to the third pick, and that's the reason, Lucas, why Mac Jones is being looked at.
He's accurate.
In my opinion, because he's accurate, he throws on time, he understands. If you look at him, he doesn't have the athleticism, but what you do is when you look at him, Chris, you say, this guy is closer to what an NFL quarterback needs to do.
And he fits the system that is run in San Francisco and what they want to do with them. Kind of almost like that Brady-style short, quick passes.
And Shanahan's always looking for a guy to make that decision, the right decision right away. And that's one of the knocks supposedly on Jimmy Garoppolo, who didn't always make the decisions, guys, as fast as he should have. And Shanahan gets frustrated with that. And
at the same time, he might keep Jimmy G and say, this is now a competition, Jimmy. You have to stay on the field. Compared to before where he had nothing in the backup and it's all his and it's all his. Now this is competition because if Max sits there and comes and they take him and they put him right away and say, hey, Jimmy, you don't do the job. This kid's going in right away. We're not waiting for you. So, it's a competition that I think that could be striving for him. Will it work? I don't know. But it's surprising, Joe, because you're talking about a kid who is 15th or later. He's already up to
as
number
far
3.
down as 33rd on some big boards.
I mean, I even had him. Me personally, when I was looking at it, they said Pittsburgh might even be able to scoop him up and groom him for a year behind Big Ben and step into a system there.
Totally agree. And he's already 53.
And then it came to the Patriots. So the Patriots going to take him, the Saban connection. And all of a sudden, we're talking about Mac Jones at 3. Talking about a kid that was supposed to slide past the first round and be picked. It was between him and Kyle Trask. He'd be the first quarterback in the second round. All of a sudden, he's up to 3rd. And I think it shows. And it's not like he's not mobile. I mean, he's running the 4.8 40. That's in the same territory that Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's
ran.
not Tom Brady.
So it's not like he's out there with Tom Brady in the cargo shorts and the white T-shirt and the skinny fat frat boy look that everybody likes to talk about. I tell you what, the kid's played at the best college football school that we've seen in recent memory. He's played under a strict Victorian coach and Nick Saban. He's very, very accurate.
And it's a pro style offense. You can't dismiss the fact that when you play in a pro style offense, you're at least somewhat prepared. You're prepared for the next level, and just watching the highlights, you can see that throws on time, gets rid of the ball when he needs to, makes the right read.
Yeah, the read.
And sometimes when you look at the guys that are just pure athletes, they wow you in their 40 time, they wow you with their arm strength, but we've all seen the guys who can throw the ball through a brick wall, and when it comes to the NFL, it's a different game. Yeah, you need to be able to make all the throws, but you need to be able to do those other things, decision making and being accurate. Nothing tops those two things in the NFL.
Yeah, and they want to talk about the athletes that he had, who he had at wide receiver. Yes, that is notable, but also too, there's something to be said about a quarterback that can get them the ball at the right time and allows them to maximize their ability for run after catch and yards after catch and putting the ball in the right spot to make sure these receivers get an extra 5 or 6 receptions, and Devontae Smith gets an extra touchdown or 2 in terms of where he catches the ball and goes in the run. So there's something to be said about what goes hand in hand there and being able to work so cohesively. And I think it's why those guys, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, have both come out and said, for one, the guy that they played most of their snaps with and had the most success with was Mac Jones, which is why they prefer Mac Jones. I don't think it was anything teammate related there with them, but something to be said by guys with that much talent saying they prefer him over Tua, and Tua's a damn impressive athlete and damn impressive quarterback himself. So, something to be said about that too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And before we just blow past it quickly, obviously the 49ers making the trade here to move from 12 to 3, giving up, obviously, their first-round pick this year, which was 12 at the time, and then the next 2 years giving up first-round draft picks and this year's 3rd, and then trading back to number 6 with the Eagles, giving up one of those extra first-round picks that they picked up to get back to 6 because they don't want to be down at 12. They want to have probably one of the receivers that they really have their eye on.
John Lynch and Shanahan, I think John Lynch has done a good job over there in San Fran. I think they're a step away from really doing a good job in the NFC. And I think this is the way that they sat there and said, how can we do this but not kill the bank? And almost come back. If we watch the movie Draft Day, it was almost that kind of thing where we gave up a lot of picks early, then we came back and we got the picks back, things like that. And I think that's how they did it. It's going to work for them. They're going to get the guy that they want at 3, and I think we all agree that it's going to be Mac Jones.
I think it's a very hyper-aggressive division. You got to deal with Arizona has Kyler Murray, who's an incredibly talented athlete. DeAndre Hopkins out there, J.J. Watt now being added, more defensive weapons being added under a very offensive-minded air raid head coach in Cliff Kingsbury.
And you can't forget, guys, that Shanahan gets gets his tires pumped quite a bit. But out of 4 years, he's only had one winning season.
Yeah.
The year they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, for all of the greatness of his scheming and his system, when he's had to go to his backups, they've not done well.
Mm-hmm.
They have not done well out. I had a lot of injuries last year.
Yeah.
But, I think it's also, you're an owner. After a while, you start to look and say, what, it's great that everybody says, brilliant offensive mind, but,
Proof is in the stats.
Yeah, and the Pats went 7-9 last year with no talent, 8 guys who opted out, and a quarterback who threw 10 touchdown passes.
That's it.
8 touchdown passes, I'm sorry, 10 interceptions. And they went 7-9. So don't give me the, how great Shanahan is.
Mm-hmm.
And now you kind of reset your clock as a coach and as a GM when you bring in a new quarterback.
Yeah. Don't forget now.
Because now they look and they say, well, this is really your guy.
I think it shows confidence in the ownership in Lynch and Shanahan, but also, too, could be a little panicking. Could be, hey.
Well, let's not remember that Arizona's there.
You get Seattle,
Russell Wilson and that team. Don't forget Stafford has now moved over to the Rams.
Every coach in that division,
a lot of things going on.
And every single front office in that division specifically has something to prove.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll has something to prove. Russell Wilson has something to prove. That Seahawks team and those first-round exits, a lot to prove. The same with the Rams. Can they get back now with Stafford? Is Sean McVay going to be able to open things up with a guy who he thinks can do it with the arm talent? Incredibly young offense in Arizona with Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury. Great offensive coach, but, hey, you get a win within a year or two. You got to start getting a winning season here within a season or two. And the same thing with Shanahan. So as much as it can be said that the ownership has confidence, or it also could be said to say, hey, the GM and the coach, no, their time's almost up. And they had to make this call to really pony up and within the next year or two really put up some numbers.
Yeah,
so,
I would definitely look at it kind of in the vein that, as I mentioned, when you had Jimmy and everything fell into place, you made it to the Super Bowl. When you didn't, you were below 500 and had some bad records. And you know what? You look at a guy like Sean McVay. His quarterback, Jared Goff, was not great, and they still always were above 500, and he got hurt a lot, and they still won games,
with his
right?
thumb being held on by a bull.
And they won games, and they won games. That's coaching. Going below 500 just because you had to go to your backup. I think that it's time for them to
maybe once, but after that first time, you got to know exactly what you're looking at.
And it's time for them to to show that the proof is in the pudding, that you really are a good coach. They have all kinds of offensive weapons. They had a great defense, a couple years back. So it's time to, to show it.
I think this is where the draft now at number 4, because you're locked in with the 3, kind of opens a little bit, and maybe teams can go in some different ways to look at it. And at number 4 with Atlanta, Joe, Matt Ryan obviously is still going to be there. It's not like they haven't had an opportunity to score. They still have. Matt's made some tough decision at times. I think they look O-line here to maybe kind of protect him. And if not, sneak away with probably one of the best athletes in the field at 6'6", 240, and Kyle Pitts at tight end from Florida. I think those are the two positions they go. I think that's the need they need to fill in O-line and tight end. So if it's not Pitts, I will definitely say Sewell from Oregon at 6'6", 225. But I think those would be the 2 spots that they would probably make a move here for Atlanta.
Yeah, I think you're on point there, Chris. Maybe a wide receiver, but I think again, if I was making the pick, I would probably go with Kyle Pitts. Exceptional talent. Tight ends usually don't get drafted in the top 10 overall. When they do, it usually doesn't work out that great. So there's kind of a value there, but this guy's a little different. This guy, when he was on the outside, lined up as a wide receiver, still had an unbelievable rating as far as being able to get open and make the catch. So tremendous speed in the 4.4s, and as you said, you're talking about guys 6'6", Lucas, 240. So Penei Sewell,
Yep.
yeah, you can't go wrong there because you need to protect your quarterback. But to me, you got Matt Ryan, and you probably got him for this year and 2 more,
Yep.
just because of the cap hit.
Sure.
Next year, to get rid of Matt Ryan, the dead money is over $40 million. So, I mean, if once you move on from Matt Ryan, you either got to wait this year and 2 more years and then say, he's still young enough at 36, give him 3 years. Let's see what we can do, build around him. We got a new coach ourselves. And then make a decision, a couple years down the road, maybe when he's on that last year, that you got to hold on to him.
Arthur Bailey's coming from a very run-heavy, run-oriented offense with Derrick Henry, and I think that's why they would go tight end. Now, they've spent 2 first-round picks in the last 2 years on offensive linemen, and it hasn't really helped. They have been in the bottom half of the league in terms of their PFF rating, in terms of their offensive line, and that's why I think you see some of the struggles from Matt Ryan, but you still have Julio Jones, you still have Calvin Ridley. But now you get a new head coach, a different culture in there, more of a run-oriented culture to more supplement Matt Ryan and maybe more of that play-action passing game. Because, he's still in the top half of quarterbacks in the NFL. So if you can, build up some depth on the defensive side of the ball and get one stud in this guy, Kyle Pitts. Because don't forget, the new GM there, too, in Fontenot, was a former Saints executive with Jimmy Graham. So I'm sure that he has fond memories of picking Jimmy Graham and letting him run wild. For them coming out of the U. So, I mean, there's definitely something to be said about Kyle Pitts there. And if they don't end up trading down, I'd have to say that Pitts would be the guy that they take at 4.
Yeah, I like that.
Sounds good.
And again, we're not really going to talk today about additional trades or make our own trades, but there is a possibility that 4, 5, 7, 9, those teams could make trades. And then you just have to wait and see. And it'll all be driven by quarterbacks. So it's once you get past those first 3, who likes Trey Lance or who likes Justin Fields enough to say, I'm not going to wait. Carolina is obviously one of the teams that really are part of that speculation.
Yeah, and which leads obviously now to Cincinnati. And what do you got to do? You got to protect Joe Burrow after what just happened to him and how that team was going.
Dunk for Sewell.
And you have to think right off the bat, say, hey, we got to take the best, obviously, offensive lineman, and Sewell seems to be the guy there. So if it is Pitts at 4, I definitely see Sewell coming out of this spot with no problem at all to protect Joe. And you've seen what Joe can do when he's got time and protection. Was having a great year until he got hurt. So I think it's a slam dunk here on this one and take Sewell.
Yeah, I have no problem going O-line here or going with a wide receiver. Yeah, Jamar Chase, just because of the familiarity.
And A.J. Green gone.
Yeah, and A.J. And, there's a couple ways to protect your quarterback. One, give him good talent so the ball gets out of his hands quick, or have a good offensive line. So, I to say for sure what the Bengals will do, either way, I don't think, they can go wrong. So, we'll see.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd say probably Sewell is I think, the more effective pick. The only way that Chase comes in the conversation is how much does Joe Burrow really want to push that?
And especially this year, and the way it is now, the league is really going more and more to the glamour positions, and everybody wants that, the flashy guy. You draft that big, Penei Sewell, when he played, he opted out this past year. He was 19 years old as a sophomore. 19 years old. So your film on Penei Sewell is when he was 19 and he was dominating guys who were seniors, in college football. So
closer to men than he, because he wasn't even in the 20s.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't even 20 years old. He was a teenager. So, but again, you got a guy like Jamar Chase, an elite talent, who happens to be, the wide receiver of the quarterback. So when they were in college, so.
Well, I mean, so now we get to the point where when Miami traded and went to 12. Then they reach back up, Joe, and go to 6. Why would they reach up from 12 and go back to 6 to sit in their mind and say, okay, the reason we're doing that because probably 7 through 11 could grab all the wide receivers. And I think that Tua needs, because they need something over there, and I think they got to go wide receiver right here. Whether they want Chase if he's available, if not Waddle, if not, obviously the Heisman Trophy winner, and Devontae Smith.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you do it, obviously. So you move down to 12. Now you've got, between where you were, 3rd overall, you got 9 picks in there. You're thinking, there's going to be a run on wide receivers. Kyle Pitts is going to be gone for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for offensive skilled positions, that's pretty much it. Some quarterbacks are going to get taken, but you're going to probably get maybe, the fourth best offensive player.
I mean, they
that
would
was
wish.
available.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that being.
Oh, they'd love to have.
Oh, they would love to have Pitts.
Oh, they'd love to have
two
Pitts.
tight end set with
yeah.
Gesicki
Especially
and him.
when you're a young
Oh,
quarterback, you like to
And
throw the
Pitts, you can
middle of
flex
the
out.
field.
Oh, yeah.
In middle of the field.
Yep.
I mean,
Safety valves.
Yeah, you get rid of the ball quickly.
And for
When you
Tua,
see
they need
pressure,
one.
when you see pressure coming, you have a tight end who can get open right away. It's much easier to make that throw than to the outside. So yeah, they in their mindset, if we move back to 6, we're going to get either Pitts,
Yep.
Chase, or Devontae Smith.
Yep.
And I wouldn't rule out the fact too if they could also think. I mean, they could also be thinking along the lines of the Bengals are going to get Jamar Chase at 5. They snatch up Penei Sewell at 6 if he doesn't go to the Bengals there, and you really supplement that offensive line right after getting this pick you have right now and another first round and other picks that you have. Once you traded away Laramie Tunsil, which is a steal for you right now, you pick up the top offensive lineman in the draft this year, and you still get your quarterback the year before, and you really build up something there. There's also the option for that, but I'd have to see them going more likely than not, probably Jamar Chase. But any of the 3 receivers between Chase, Waddle, and Devontae Smith, I don't think you could be upset with, especially considering the chemistry that they have between the 2 Alabama guys.
You could even be right, because even Joe said, and I have to agree with him, these teams are going for that high offensive showcase. And when you look at Pitts and Chase, now they're not talking Sewell, and could slide to 6.
Yeah, look, I think he's going to slide.
So it could happen, and they could see him in that. So I have it down on mine. Like you said, either Chase for wide receiver or Sewell and Pitts. One of those guys. In that formation of falling there. So it wouldn't surprise me if he happened to be available there, because I know at 7, if Detroit's not taking a wide receiver after losing Kenny Golladay and what they have, I would be really surprised here if Detroit went anywhere else, because you got to give Goff, somebody to throw to, and you got to think that one of these guys, whether it's Waddle or Smith. Or Chase, whoever's there at the time, it's got to be a wide receiver.
Yeah, I would think that it's
I'd be
either,
shocked if it wasn't.
Again, if Sewell drops, though, the only thing I would say here is if Sewell's dropping and he's available to the Lions at 7, look at their new head coach. He wants to play smash mouth football. Dan Campbell.
Yep.
He wants to play. He wants to be strong in the trenches. So if Sewell's available and Pitts is gone and Chase is gone and Devontae Smith is gone, now you're talking, Chris.
Well, that's fine.
Waddle
Yeah.
or Penei Sewell.
Yep.
And I think there you say, let's build an offensive line and let's just get in the trenches and just, try to dominate theirs. Because the Lions, with Goff, they're going to have to protect him. They're going to have to run the ball a lot. They're going to have to, use play action. He's not going to be a guy that they can use like they did with their former quarterback. You just put him back there and throw 45 times every game and think you're going to win a game. They with Matthew Stafford it wasn't working. It's not going to work with Jared Goff.
Yeah, so I think you add some weapons for him if you can't build up that offensive line, because I'm still a Kerryon Johnson fan. I still think that once he gets healthy, running backs are dime a dozen. I'm sure they will take a running back late in this draft as well. To supplement that run game in that offense, because they've had guys there, but you lose Galladay for nothing, which is definitely tough there. They have T.J. Hawkinson at tight end, so you can build off of Hawkinson at tight end. There's also the option too of adding a guy like Micah Parsons, the best linebacker in the draft, who's one of the best defensive run stoppers as well, and that starts to come into play. Obviously, the Broncos could be looking at that as well. But if you're looking for Dan Campbell, if he isn't a big fan of the receiver he has there, if Jamar Chase does go earlier than 7, say he's big on Jamar Chase, I wouldn't rule out him going with a hard-hitting linebacker out of Penn State.
Yeah. Joe, can you see a separation though between Chase, Waddle, and Smith? Out of those 3, can you sit there and say...
They're very close.
They're real close. So I don't think there's this real separation between them.
But then after you get past Waddle,
yeah.
then I think you're starting to talk about guys that, are not quite the same caliber.
Correct.
Waddle had the injuries, so there's a little concern there. But, we talked earlier about the Dolphins, and when you have Parker on the outside, Parker's a contested catch guy. He's a guy who goes downfield. You're throwing a ball to him. He's always covered, but he makes catches.
Yeah.
So that's why when you're the Dolphins, you want a guy who's going to get separation.
Because he's always been hurt.
He gets hurt a lot, but he's a contested catch guy. The only thing, again, on the Lions before we move on to the Panthers, because that's an interesting one, is... Again, you're a new head coach, so I try to put myself in his shoes. My quarterback, I'm kind of married to him, but not really. I'm married to him because we made that deal so we could get some first-round picks. Mm-hmm. It gives us stability for 2 years because we're thinking, you know what we've been doing here in Detroit hasn't been working. So we're going to go with Jared Goff, at least this year, and probably next year, and then try to build the talent around him. And then if something happens to work out, great. If not, we move on and we're ready, in Dan Campbell's third year to do something different. And you try to, you got to build.
Yeah, but building that culture.
And the talent here, Lucas, the talent on the Lions is just abysmal. I mean, Matt Patricia did not do a good job there. Let's be fair. That team deteriorated over the 3 years. So, anyone coming in now, I again, if we're in Dan Campbell's shoes, Chris, I think we're saying, we got to have a culture, and we got to be like, this is football. This is football. We're not going to be every game. Yep. Yeah, we're going to play it like the game that's meant to be played. Yep. And then you get to number 8 and the Panthers. And the Panthers, obviously, Teddy Bridgewater, really not satisfied with what he did, guys. So everyone and their grandfather is projecting that they want to move up if they have to. But, the way we've conducted our mock draft here, no additional trades added. So they get to number 8, and there's 2 quarterbacks in the top 5 who are still left: Trey Lance and Justin Fields.
Yep.
And you have a quarterback that is going to be very good at bridging the gap. I'm not guaranteeing any winning seasons with Teddy Bridgewater, but if between those 2 guys who are very mobile, very unorthodox quarterbacks, so you can run a lot of different spread, a lot of different option stuff out of, especially more likely prior to Teddy's injury, he's a very mobile quarterback, but still has the mobility now to be able to really bridge a quarterback bridge the gap for those young quarterbacks. And it looks like Trey Lance seems to be the favorite right now, just because of the raw athleticism he possesses, and coming out of a program that's also produced Carson Wentz as well. And obviously no one really huge on Ohio State quarterbacks because of the recent success of them, but I got a different feeling about Justin Fields just because he's smoother than a lot of these other guys. A lot of these other Ohio State quarterbacks are either immature or herky-jerky. Fields just seems very smooth in everything he does, but then again, you get the flash factor with a lot of the 4.40 and such. So it's going to be an interesting pick. It's definitely worth the discussion to have here, whether they go Lance or Fields.
What's your preference, Chris?
I think it's Fields. I think they're ready to step up and say, okay, it's Ohio State. It's a little bit more than North Dakota State. It's showcase that I can put on right now. Fits our system maybe with what Teddy's been doing and how he runs and how he handles it. Whether Justin can be a better thrower than Teddy. Maybe Teddy can manage him a little bit, show him the ropes, keep him, get him in there. But I think they go Fields because it's more, as you would say, Joe, pro-ready than maybe seeing Trey Lance. I think Lance might have to wait maybe a year. I know he's got a lot of raw talent. And, we've seen what Wentz has done in the past and how his future's gone. But I think they go Fields.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Lance, I think if you draft Trey Lance, you're going to sit him for a year. He's too young.
Yep.
He's only 20 years old, had 11 total starts. Tremendous talent. So the same with Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe if you're Carolina, are you comfortable with sitting Trey Lance for a year and playing Teddy Bridgewater? And you know what's going to happen 4 games in, 5 games in, 6 games in. You're struggling. You're 2-4. Teddy Bridgewater is a dink and dunk type of guy. Doesn't throw the ball down the field. Nothing electric about Teddy Bridgewater. Fans start to, talk radio starts to go. Fans start to go. Come on, it's time to make your move. Justin Fields, would probably be ready to play right out of the gate. At least give him a shot. You'd be willing to. So Lance, you probably wouldn't. I think they do like Trey Lance though, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a matter of what they decide to do that day. Now the scary thing on Justin Fields, watched his pro day yesterday. Someone he threw a ball on a corner route out of bounds. I mean, the ball landed out of bounds. Now he's usually accurate, but Lucas, I don't think can be dismissed what you said about Ohio State quarterbacks.
Yep.
People look and say Dwayne Haskins, Cardell Jones.
Yep.
They go back and they start running through these guys. I mean, Joe Burrow was at Ohio State, but then had to go to LSU,
Right.
and I mean to be a star. So there is some of that, and those are all the things. Those are the things that we have no idea. We're speculating now regarding Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, but Justin Fields has been dropping, though prior to the start of the season he probably was number 2, right behind Trevor Lawrence.
So we can say here at least Carolina's
It's a
thinking
quarterback, yeah.
So let's look at it that
There's
way.
going to
So
be
I
one
think we're in the
quarterback
right
left after pick number 8, I think.
That's I totally agree.
Unless there's a trade up into either 4, 5,
which will most likely happen, but it depends on who that may be. Because
and the cost of the trade now, guys, with what the 49ers are willing to part with.
The stakes are high. The stakes are
you
very high.
you can't miss and have a Sam Darnold performance.
And do we think that anybody after the first 3 that we talked about, because we've already proven that apparently some team, most likely the Niners, thinks that between Mac Jones, after Zach Wilson and Lawrence, because they're pretty much the surefire 1-2, we think the Niners are going with Mac Jones. Outside of those 3, do we think that either Trey Lance or Justin Fields is worth paying that price to move up for? And I for one, don't think so. I think that you'd have to have a very set plan in place for Trey Lance, which, a quarterback to bridge it, which is a very, possibility for Carolina, which is a possibility for San Francisco, and even a possibility for the Patriots. But we'll see how that goes. But like you said, definitely having, the top 3 out of the 5 quarterbacks that we're mainly focused on with this 2021 draft will be gone within the first 8 picks.
Yeah, the Pats guys, they're not going to give up 3 first-round picks to move up. You know that. Now, Carolina or Detroit, or the Broncos, it's possible. And they give up, because they only have to move up a few spots. You move up from 8 to, let's say you're the Broncos, you say the Panthers are going to get a guy at 8. And I'm at 9. I want that guy. I want to have a choice of the 2 guys. I don't want to depend on who they're taking. So I try to move up to 7 and just jump ahead. In a world where maybe you give up an extra first-round pick, maybe the Pats would think about, I'll jump to 7 and jump ahead of Carolina. And even if Carolina moves up from there or Detroit, I still get a guy. But they're not going to trade 3 first-round picks.
Which then probably by then, when you think about it, there's 1 left, and then you look at Denver, Dallas, the Giants, Philadelphia, the Chargers.
Yeah, I don't think
teams that don't need a quarterback.
But I don't think he gets by Denver, Chris. I think Drew Lock. I don't think he gets by Denver.
I think Denver stays with Lock.
I am not a Drew Lock fan.
Yep.
There's something there that I wasn't a fan of when they drafted him in the 2nd round. I really thought that they should have really tried to focus more on Case Keenum, because there's something to be said about a veteran quarterback who's had success at that time. And I really thought that he was in a prove-it year to see whether he could still be a starter in that league, and you could have used that to your advantage and really sat on it for another year. They instead elected to take Drew Lock, and they've gone through some of the same inconsistencies now. But where do you go?
I've seen a little bit more out of him than probably something. I think they're going to stick with him.
But he's got a lot of talent at wide receiver. He's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, he's got some intangibles too there that I think Elway actually likes from him, because I think if that was true, they would have got rid of him already.
Maybe a guy like Elway, but think about Vic Fangio. So any time you look at any of this, you always got to put the head coach into the equation. Yeah. So you think of Fangio. He's done nothing in 2 years. Absolutely zip. Yep. Nothing. You watch him on the sideline, and you think like, wow, this guy's a presence. No. Yep. So when you're unless you're Wade Phillips and someone looks on the sideline and says that guy he's an NFL coach. You look at Fangio and you're like, yeah, and your quarterback is, yeah. So, those are the things you've got to throw into the mix to think like, if they have another year like that with Drew Lock, he's not back. He's done. No. This is it.
I think they give him one more year, and I think they come out with Micah Parsons in this pick here. From Penn State, 6'3", 240. Yeah,
reminds you even better than Roquan Smith.
Yeah.
Roquan Smith asking that ain't that category.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Micah Parsons on the PFF big board is number 7, so it's not a stretch here at all.
No.
Obviously, getting a value pick.
Yep.
He's the first offensive player being taken
Yep.
in this case. So again, not having a problem with that. It's just a matter of, if it's Elway and if it's management making the move and saying we're giving Drew Lock another year, we're going to build talent here, then that'll be the pick.
Yeah.
If you're the head coach on the sideline and you're saying here's what I need. You take the quarterback because what you're trying to do is give yourself a little more time. You can get a year and say, hey, look, we did better. Give me one more year, and you can get a couple years at least. You go with Micah Parsons and you have the same record, you're gone.
Yep.
So that's again, it comes to the conversation of the risk move of like, hey, I might not have a job next year. I kind of got to maybe do something unorthodox. Maybe we go with Trey Lance.
And quarterbacks give you hope. So don't forget.
People talking.
Yeah, you get people and
press is good press.
Yeah, and quarterbacks they give teams hope. Like, you know what, this guy could be great. That's why the Jets have Sam Darnold and they're going to draft Zach Wilson because Sam Darnold has kind of run that course where people were like, Sam Darnold, look, we got the 3rd overall, we got the guy we wanted. Potential through the roof. It's the Joe Namath syndrome. It never goes away. It's always a quarterback is the glamour position. So it gives hope. Teams say, like, this guy could be the next great one.
Right.
And then it opens up the conversation to if they don't go quarterback, and we're assuming Fields goes to the Panthers, all of a sudden, given the Cowboys and the Giants pick who don't need quarterbacks,
Right.
You look at 12, Philadelphia is not exactly sure of Jalen Hurts as QB1. Could you imagine them going with another North Dakota State product at quarterback if Lance is still there?
Yeah, no. No, I would say no.
I don't see that happening either.
So pick 10, the Cowboys at
Yep.
10, cornerback speculated by most, Surtain.
You would have to think him. Farley's name was up there early, but then
Back injury.
But then he dropped.
Yeah, back injury is
I think this is
dropping
Surtain, the second from Alabama at 6'2", 202. I'm a Cowboy fan. That's the way I would go. That's me.
You got to build your defense.
You have to. You got to do that. I mean, it can be anything because they were run on, they were thrown on, they were giving up 33 points a game. They had a lot of things going against them, so they got to start somewhere. But I got them ranked 12th on the list here on the big board. They're at 10. I still think he'll be the first cornerback off the board. But you're getting an athlete, Joe. This kid's a good athlete. Teams were afraid to throw on that side when Surtain was on the field for Alabama. So if the Cowboys are thinking smart, I'm hoping they're going that way.
Yeah, I would agree.
So then it brings us to the New York Football Giants, who need some help on with the pass rush, but they also need some offensive line help. And big tackle from Northwestern, Rashawn Slater, sits there and looks like a surefire pick to slide over and replace Nate Solder on that offensive line to protect to a pretty good quarterback that I think has surprised a lot of people in an offense that signed Kenny Golladay and added some weapons and quit John Ross, and a culture has been built there very, very quickly in terms of Joe Judge and what he's been able to build there. There seems to be life in New York there, and it's been a while since the Coughlin era that we've seen life in there because Ben McAdoo was definitely not it. And then Shermer definitely wasn't it, but there seems to be some life in that locker room. And if you add some protection for a guy with some crazy arm talent, I think that's the way they go at number 11.
Yeah, they've done the job on the skill positions. They've given him players around him. Again,
let's talk this way, fellas. You look at the draft needs and what the Giants want. First thing they say is edge. Then they go tight end, linebacker, cornerback, wide receiver. Doesn't even mention anything about the O-line. Now, I think Lucas could be correct there with that pick at Slater. But if I'm thinking edge and knowing the Giants, maybe they want to, I'm looking at Awuzie Koromaru from Notre Dame at 6'2", 215. Maybe they want an edge and maybe get him to come off the corner. He's the highest edge rusher. So if you're going by needs and what they're talking about, the Giants need, he would be the way to go. But still, you want to protect Daniel Jones. You want to be able to get the run game back because he's coming back.
We have Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley's coming back. So never mind what they got now with Kenny Golladay. They want to be able to get the ball out there. So they got some things working for them. It's a matter of protecting Jones, or do they want to get a little bit excited on the defense and get a little bit more edge rush and get back to getting the quarterback like a Strahan kind of a player. And I think that's the guy. If they make a move on the edge, they would go that way. But definitely Slater if they go offensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you're in that same situation, guys, as with Sam Darnold. Daniel Jones coming into his third year. You put the talent out there around him in the skill positions. You want to protect him so that at the end of this year you can say he's the guy or he's not the guy. Mm-hmm. Because that's when you get into that fourth year where you got to pick up that rookie contract option to get a fifth year. And then you're paying a guy who's not produced for 4 years, 18, 19, $20 million. Or you do what the Rams did. You sign Jared Goff to some ungodly number. And you know, or you do what happened with Kirk Cousins, gets franchised twice, and he's making 30-some-odd million with the Vikings, all guaranteed money. And that puts you in a predicament. And I think the NFL's got to start to wise up. Like, if you got a middle-of-the-road quarterback, you got to just pay him middle of the road. Unless you have an elite guy, don't pay him elite money. And that's what we're seeing a lot in baseball now, by the way. Guys are getting the disparity is starting to grow. Big money over here, and then these other guys are just like, you're getting the 1 or 2 years, and you're getting good money, let's face it. But it's not, you're not paying guys like, he's not worth that.
The wins above replacement in baseball compared to the dollar amount has risen astronomically within the past 5 years. And I'm sure if there was a comparable number in the NFL, you would see the same as well, in terms of where they see value and in terms of what the stat sheet relates to the value as opposed to win. It's a very different conversation.
And you see, you don't win. I mean, Kirk Cousins. If I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, I'm like, there's a lot of Kirk Cousins.
So you got to pay Justin Jefferson at some point.
So why wouldn't you have talent all around a guy who's okay, rather than saying he's slightly above okay, but we'll pay him like he's elite. Mm-hmm. He's not elite, and that's where they get into trouble. 12th overall, the Eagles selecting with that pick that they got when they made the trade with the Dolphins. Yep. And needs here. I mean, they're a team a few years ago were in the Super Bowl, won it, and their talent is just deteriorated. A lot of it is what happens over time, but also they did the same thing. Paid Carson Wentz big money and didn't get the production to match.
And now they're going to eat $35 million of dead money this year as well, too.
I think if things fall in the directions that we've been talking about with the QBs, I think they pick up that third receiver that's available, so whether it's Smith, Waddle, or Chase, one of those three, because I think they're in high demand. That's their team need, according to the NFL draft team needs, saying wide receiver being their first one when you look up the Eagles. So they got wide receiver, tight end, and cornerback. So wide receivers to go, I think it's got to be that third guy coming back. If you remember last year, wasn't there a couple of teams in that middle between 10 and 13? I think it was Vegas was involved in it, and a couple other teams. There was like 3 guys, and they were all jockeying. Denver was one.
Yeah. Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, those guys. I think this
Henry
is
Ruggs.
Right. I think this is the same thing that's happening with Waddle, Chase, and Smith. And whichever third one comes out of it, I think it falls to the Eagles.
Yeah, probably Waddle, simply because the other guys were able to play the entire season. Chase is considered, and Devontae Smith. The knock on Devontae Smith, or the concern, is he weighs 170 pounds. Yep. Other than that, there's no concern. Right. But, and Waddle is a great pick, I think.
Yeah, Smith has said that he doesn't plan on changing his weight. Well, we'll see what happens when he comes over the middle for a slant.
You can only add so much weight, though.
By maintaining agility is a big thing, too.
You just got to make sure you don't get the big hit, and the quarterback's got to help him with that.
Look at the kid from KC. He doesn't really get hit, and he's just as small as anyone else. He's fast. He finds a way to get open, and
Edelman survived for years.
When it's time to get out of the way, he gets out of the way. Can the kid do it? Maybe he'll gain a little bit more weight. Coming up in the pros, so it's possible.
and you can find a way. There are guys who, regardless, they're elusive, even if it's running routes. I mean, Edelman didn't take the big hits that Wes Welker took. Welker running the same in the same scheme took a ton of big hits. Not as much for Edelman, and I think he'll be fine. You just got to hope that he doesn't take that big hit or some fluky injury. But I think Waddle here, and then that brings us to the Chargers. And a lot of the teams now, no one needs quarterbacks in this next group, aside from the Patriots.
Where the discussion
really
begins.
Yeah, so then you start saying, you're looking at the draft order, and you're looking at team needs, and you're looking at the big board, and you're saying, okay, Chargers, your offense is pretty good.
The line. I
like the kid at 16. He's in the big board at 16. I like Darisaw from Virginia Tech, 6'5", 314, offensive tackle. Somebody that gets Hebert standing straight up, protect that kid, and watch him throw, because that kid is a talent.
He set all those rookie passing records behind the last-ranked offensive line in the NFL of last season. So just think of what you could just help him out a little bit. Just a little bit of juice.
And this guy's the next guy on the board. We have him at 16, and they're at 13, so I don't think it's really much of a reach. I think he's got some possibility and some talent. But, I think they're setting a lot of the skills positions, and they just got to let the kid do his thing. And he looked so good last year. Keep protecting him as much as they can, and let him go to work.
But also, too, with Brandon Staley, a defensive head coach, J.C. Horn will be on the board. They traded away Desmond King for a second-round pick last year, too. So, wouldn't hold it against them to take a defensive player, but I think you have to supplement that offensive line. So you can't look past the first-round pick and not try to help out the offensive line.
Their needs are offensive tackle, edge, safety, and cornerback. So Horn's a kid that, he probably could fit in there along with the offensive tackle. But if that's their first need, offensive tackle, you have to sit back and say...
Your point regarding Darisaw and Horn, next couple picks, I have them on the next two picks. I had Horn and then Darisaw to the Vikings, but it's six of one, half dozen of another. It's a guy looking at his squad and saying, you know what, here's where I want to put the emphasis. They need the defensive talent, but you can't go wrong to say, hey, you know what, this guy is the future. We're going to protect him, and we're going to try to do everything else, but we've got talent at the skill positions, and we're going to protect the quarterback, and guys, the rest of it, we'll cobble together and build talent as we go.
Yeah, like you said, with Minnesota now, adding a cornerback in terms of the time where they had Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes out there, now if you add a guy like J.C. Horn, who looks to be pretty good out of the University of South Carolina, I think that would be if it'd be him or Darisaw. They're going to add offensive line help. They're going to add a secondary back to supplement that defense, because you still have a decent pass rush. You still have a decent linebacker core with Eric Kendricks. So adding a young cornerback that's one of the better on the board would probably be the way to go if Darisaw goes the pick before.
Sure.
And that brings us to the Patriots in 15. So, talking about the Pats at 15, the odds are that the quarterbacks are gone. I severely doubt if they're available at that point. I think there's a lot of speculation, a lot of projected Micah Parsons. He might be gone by then. If he's available, he's certainly in the equation. But I think Belichick is going to go on the defensive side of the ball.
Is he going to use this pick, Joe? Is he going to trade it and say I'll get second and third or drop down? Like he has in the past?
Chris, if somebody comes in with an offer to say, okay, we're at 15 and we want this, let's say a wide receiver.
Yep.
Even if it's Rashawn Bateman or somebody like that, he'll trade down. If it's like 15, okay, I can move down to 22 and I pick up another second, something like that. He's going to do it, especially if it's not for a quarterback. I think if by some chance a quarterback slips,
our board right now, as we've gone through it, without the expectation of teams trading up for a quarterback, Lance still would have been there by team.
Lance could, and if somebody's hanging on and doesn't get selected, which I find it really boils down to Carolina's going to take a quarterback. It's Denver. Does Denver say, as Chris said, I like Drew Lock enough. I'm going to ride. I'm going to ride the wave with Drew Lock for one more year and pick somebody else, and then I'm going to see. Okay. My coach is gone anyway at the end of this year. So I'm looking at it saying, I'm going to see what Vic Fangio can do. If I bring in a rookie quarterback, he can always come back and say, he's a rookie quarterback. Give me another year. Right. So if a quarterback's there, I don't think or if it's close to 15, maybe he moves a little bit if he feels he has to, but he really doesn't have to. Once he gets past 9, you don't have to.
So you think they're going D?
So I would say Micah Parsons on D. When you start talking about the edge guys, Chris, you talked about them a lot. I mean, physical talent, a lot of ability, but not really, that productive in college. So, you start to look at the interior line. Again, nothing like super great inside. And, because of it, you're left with, limited options. I think
I'm not wowed by Barmore or
No.
Owusu or even Trayvon Moehrig. I'm not really wowed by any of these defensive players now at this point. It's really the late round receivers is where you get into the more of the fun stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you could talk about, as I said, wide receiver, but Bateman is not a guy he's not a guy who gets separation. I mean, he can catch a contested ball, good route runner, but at 15, it's not worth it. So to me, it's your point, Chris. If he moves down, then he starts to look and says, here's a guy that we can get. Cornerback, we've burned through a few of them, but Asante Samuel Jr. is there. Greg Newsome from Northwestern is available. A couple guys there that you might say maybe a little bit of a stretch.
Even Farley too.
Farley is he's an elite talent.
Yep.
He was in most regards considered the best.
He was. Now he dropped. Now his back
with
injuries.
a little bit of
Yeah.
a little bit of back surgery there. So if I'm the Pats and you move down a little bit, or maybe Bill just says, you know what, this guy's too good.
That's what he did with Duggar. That's what he did with Kyle Duggar.
Yeah, he's too good. I'm going to take him. So I would say they go defense. My choice would be, again, Micah Parsons if he's available. It's possible. I would say it's probably about 50-50 that he is. And then after that, maybe you look at a cornerback. I think if Micah Parsons is not there, there's no quarterback there.
They'll trade down.
He's trading down.
So then we got the Cardinals. The Cardinals at 16, who they don't have that tight end threat. Pitts will be well gone unless the Cardinals make some sort of crazy move up to 5, which, hey, I wouldn't rule it out. But for all intents and purposes here, you need some D-line help and you need some secondary help too with Patrick Peterson, setting to hit the free agent
Yeah,
market.
the needs come out, Lucas. Cornerback, running back, and offensive line. So already you've said it there, whether you're Horn, Newsome, Farley, one of those
even
guys.
More again, a safety where you can move guys around that
the
second.
kid from TCU,
The way those athletes work now, being Newsome, Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah.
I think they would be willing to take a shot on a kid like Farley as well.
Yep.
To supplement that secondary because you get your pass rush and J.J. Watt if he can stay healthy. You get Chandler Jones, the other end, who's led the league in sacks multiple occasions. You got a guy Isaiah Simmons, who looks, once he finds his groove, is incredibly gifted and is really starting to find his flow in the defensive side of the football. So, and the offense is certainly loaded up with Hopkins, Kyler Murray, and they really think that the running back core is able to take that next step a little bit by committee, but also they do have faith in the guys they do have coming up, and it really is for the next year's make or break for Cliff Kingsbury. So it is going to be a big pick for them if they can supplement that defensive secondary. But any of those guys, in terms of, I think Asante Samuel Jr. would probably be the pick there. I would say, or even over Newsome, or depending on what you think you can work with in terms of the injuries to Caleb Fairley.
Or you look at Christian Barmore, offensive tackle, again highly rated.
Yep.
There's a need there, but you got a young quarterback. It's hard to know on it's just the flavor that when you get to that spot. It's not you look at it. It's either Barmore or I think it's a cornerback, because those are the two glaring needs. You need to protect the quarterback. We saw the game against the Pats. The Pats even put pressure on him. But it's either Barmore or, as you said, probably
one of the couple corners.
Corners and safety that's coming in. Sure.
It brings us to the Oakland Raiders, who need some help all over the place. They're pretty set in the skill positions. Derek Carr is middle of the road, I think, as you can get at quarterback. You have a stud running back in Josh Jacobs, and the run game has been pretty good. You get a stud tight end in Darren Waller, who seems unstoppable at this point. You're bringing Ruggs up. Where do you go from here to really take your team over the top? Because they play. A lot of it comes down to coaching and playing down to the competition, I feel. But where can you supplement the most talent as to where, even when you are playing with that switch, which good teams never do, they can still hang in at 10-6.
Right, and you got to put this in the equation, guys. Their entire offensive line, they've gotten rid of their entire offensive line.
That's why I was looking at Walker Little from Stanford.
Yeah, I had Walker Little as well.
I had him at 6'7", 309. Good kid, 5'2" in the 40. He's got a little bit of speed, good hands for 6'7". That's pretty solid there.
Yeah, he was an
when
elite.
you're getting rid of that line, I mean, that's their needs.
Yeah, I mean, they got rid of their entire offensive line. Their center.
They repaid all of them. They got rid of Trent Brown. They put the money all over the place.
Yeah.
And
The skill
positions ain't the problem.
Yeah, they need to improve their offensive line because they made so many moves, and it's questionable what they did. I mean, I don't know how John Gruden could have made that many moves on the offensive line. I mean, you're struggling, but he's one of those guys. He's always like tinkering. He's always going a little bit beyond what you need to do. And it's already this is his fourth year, and every year it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and the team goes on the field and it's basically the same team. So I like Walker Little. Chris does.
I'd say offensive line help. You protect Derek Carr. He's had some. I mean, you have all the offensive talent in the world. You get tight end that can help out with the blocking scheme. Just try and supplement it piece by piece and try and budget it out the right way. And because I think Derek Carr is a quarterback that if you surround him with the right talent, he might not take you to the promised land, but he can get you into a place where you're a step or two away. You're real. You get real close. You knock on that door. And I think Derek Carr's a quarterback where if you do give him the time in the pocket, that he can do those things for you. Nothing too special with him, but with the right weapons, he'll have success. So that brings us to another Miami Dolphins pick.
Well, this is the first team that's had the second pick finally. And This is the only team that's done it. Obviously, they picked down at number 6. We thought it was probably a wide receiver. But so now they come back at 18.
But if they did, so the thing is, when you look at it, if they go tackle at 6, if Sewell's there, they go tackle.
If they went that, they might go wide receiver.
Then they might go wide receiver now. But if they went wide receiver, they go with a wide receiver at 6 to help out Tua, get him some weapons. Where do you go from here?
One of their needs besides wide receivers was an edge rusher, Joe. So there you start to look at the kid from Notre Dame. You look at Pay from Michigan,
Koromoa,
Omar from Penn State,
or Quiddy Pay.
There's a few guys there on the edge. A kid from Georgia as well. So if you're looking at between 19 and 25 on our board, there's 4 edge rushes between 19 and 25. So depending on what they obviously did at 6, we'll make their selection at 18. As Lucas said, if they went offensive tackle early, probably come on wide receiver. Then you could look at that choice there. Bateman. You could look at Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. You could look at Terrence Marshall Jr. from LSU.
Even Rondale Moore from Purdue, who's had up-and-coming, but he's more of a slot guy that gets open and a little bit different than Devontae Parker.
So there's a couple of different ways they could look at, but I think wide receiver and edge are the two big spots for them. So depends on what they do.
I mean, I had Quiddy Pay here, and then Koromoa on the next pick to Washington. So those two guys are, Pay is a specimen. And again, the results are a lot of times they're not there to go with these physical traits and abilities,
right?
And so it's a guessing game. Some of this is we talked about Ojolari earlier. It's a guessing game with the edge guys. Who's going to be productive? But I would say here, Pay or Koromoa, and then Washington takes the other one.
Yeah, I'd say between the two because. Washington, there's no. I mean, they can get a quarterback later on in the draft if they want to, between Heineke or Fitzpatrick or who it may be. The only thing with Washington, maybe they had a Bateman, they had a vertical threat guy to supplement a guy with McLaurin who's a very clean, speedy route runner. But I'd see them going with Ron Rivera as a defensive head coach, and he's going to try and add to that pass rush.
And if you brought in Fitzmagic, so I mean, what you're going to try to do is. Let's have one side of the ball be dominant. Washington was very close last year. They had a very good defense. With Chase Young, that team really is taking a step on the defensive side of the ball. And then Ron Rivera. So let's make the defense even better.
If he was there, would you take Barmore in that spot at defensive tackle for Washington to clog the run?
If he does slide.
If he slides there, wouldn't you take him there? Because now it would...
They have pass rush, Chris,
exactly.
So to your point. I mean, if a corner were to slip, one of the top guys, a top guy, but I say, you work on the defense. You brought in Curtis Samuel to complement your McLaurin, and so you go with the other side of the ball, and you just say, I want to have a dominant defense in this division where the Cowboys have struggled defensively, where the Giants are okay, and try to win from that side of the ball.
So now that brings us to the Chicago Bears at 20, which I don't even know what direction to go because the Andy Dalton thing was the biggest curveball anybody's thrown, and I don't think Matt Nagy has a lot to do with that, and I feel bad for Matt Nagy because I don't even know where you turn as a head coach. Like it really there's just no. I was speechless as to where do you go from there? Where do you need to add offensive weapons, but you need to protect them, and you're still missing pieces here and there in your defense. What route do you turn with your one pick at number 20? Where do you go with that to help out a quarterback who really isn't what he was in Cincinnati anymore? A team that's you're losing defensive pieces and not playing as well and getting the turnovers and the point differential that they were there. And you still need to help out Allen Robinson on the outside. Where do you go at number 20?
Yeah, terrible cornerback play.
Yep.
So I had Greg Newsome here from Northwestern because.
Do they sit there really, Joe, at 20? Is Dalton their man and say, yes, this is it? Can they get up and say,
no,
I want Lance?
They can't afford to because their team. Yeah, they just can't afford to. One, they have no cap space. They're not in a great place. Yep. Too many depth problems. So I think what you're doing here is you're trying to say, let's get in the playoffs with Andy Dalton.
Mm-hmm.
Just be good enough. Let's have the rest of the team. Let's have the Bears defense that we had a couple years back.
They're probably more likely to trade down than anything. Just to get some more numbers in there because
when you're at that point, you're always looking. Like if you move down X number of spots and you get a third round pick, another something like that, you just keep on doing it so you can acquire talent. And they have to do that. I took Newsome again. Their cornerback play is terrible.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So that brings the Indianapolis Colts.
Offensive tackle, cornerback, wide receivers seem to be the top three needs there. I don't know. I think cornerback, maybe keep that defense going.
This might be a place where Farley goes.
They've been pretty solid there. You know what? Yeah, that could be. And if not, I was looking at Samuel Jr. on this one around there with those two kind of guys. Depending on how high they are on Farley with his injury. But I can see Indy and the next pick, Tennessee, and maybe even the Jets. Three teams right there that all want to look at cornerbacks on the defensive side of the ball.
I think that's where Farley is, most likely to go.
Yeah.
So, because when you start to look at the other names, even the guys I had here, Colts, Elijah Moore, I had Rashad Bateman for the Titans. Yep. Because obviously they lost the wide receiver, and then Farley for the Jets. I mean, here's a guy who's saying he was a top 5 talent on the big board, and now he's dropped simply because it's micro procedure. So if you're sitting there, you're like, I can get a guy. If he's hurt, I wasted a pick. But if I hit, then I'm getting a top 5 talent in the 20s. And you know what? That's the way you got to. When you're in that spot, I mean, if the Bears just needed a Caleb Farley, you would say, Bears, go and do it. The problem is they can't take a chance. They got to have a player who plays.
And the Colts, they haven't been they don't rip through free agency. They look at everything from a big board, and they've had incredible luck in dealing with the Andrew Luck injury and still being able to come out the way that they, and the Andrew Luck retirement the way that they have.
Well, they built the talent around. If Andrew Luck would have been there, they would have been phenomenal. Yeah. Let's face it,
that's an AFC champion. Yeah, that's an AFC champion style team.
They built the rest of their team, and they have talent everywhere. So for the Colts, again, if Caleb Farley's sitting there, I had Elijah Moore, and then I had Bateman for the Titans and Farley to the Jets. But I think those guys are all in that area, and I think Farley goes, to the guy who's like, hey, those three teams
that can afford it.
Yeah, the Jets are on the second pick of the first round.
Right.
They can afford that.
Yeah, so if you take a shot, I mean, you're thinking like, if I hit both of these, I hit a home run. I got Zach Wilson and Caleb Farley.
And you look at too. I mean, Marcus Mays run into the secondary very well for the Jets, so safety you're good on. So you had a lockdown corner in there as well. But they said Bateman as well could slide to one of those teams within there because you lose Corey Davis, who actually ends up going to the Jets. So those guys pretty much going to be right in that area. So then you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers at 24. and they're pretty much locked. Their secondary is pretty stellar, led by Minkah Fitzpatrick. You're going to need to replace Big Ben at some point, and Dwayne Haskins is behind him right now. What he can become, we don't know under Mike Tomlin. So quarterback around there. Could be an option later rounds.
They're saying cornerback, offensive tackle, and running back are the three major needs. And again, you fall into suit there with the guys that we have talked about. So, if you start to get into the offensive tackles, now you're looking at, like, on our board, the 28th and 29th with Radners from North Dakota State and Jenkins from Oklahoma State, both at 6'6", 300 pounds or more. Two guys in the offensive line to protect Ben so he's not getting sacked all the time and getting hurt, and open up some lanes for that run game.
Yeah, their run game was terrible last year.
So James Conner is not a bad back.
Not what we've seen from them. They've been a lot better at that, but not what they wanted. They probably will go with one of those two.
Probably Radins.
I had Radins here. But Jenkins is a good pick as well.
Something to me though there says something about. I mean, they have Juju Smith-Schuster, they have Chase Claypool, they have Deontay Johnson, and they're very good at molding these receivers. And they have Juju on a dime. And I find it hard pressing to go with a wide receiver in the first round there.
I don't see it either. I'd be shocked
because they've had a lot of success in molding them in later rounds. So I'm pretty much set in the skill tree area. So you're gonna have to go to help out, help out. Big
and they lost Villanueva. He's a free agent, so he hasn't come back yet. He's out there on the market. So that's a tackle. He was a starting tackle. They need to bolster their offensive line so that they can try to get back to the running game. And they played last year dink and dunk, and they got to 11-0, and a lot of it was just the competition at that point, and they got away. They were kind of lucky at that. But once they lost the first game, then it really started to fall apart.
So now we look to the Jacksonville Jaguars with another team picking the second time in the first round. This one, the Los Angeles Rams picks from the Dante Fowler trade just a few seasons ago. Obviously, the need still being in that tight end area. They need some help in the secondary at safety. Need some help at tackle as well. But a guy by the name of Travis Etienne to go along with his college teammate.
That's possible.
They did have a very good running back last year that was undrafted. Ran for over 1,000 yards. Mm-hmm. But something here with Travis Etienne and that connection, and Urban Meyer being the college coach, something kind of pulls to me that they might, even if they slide down a little bit here, be that as it may. Travis Etienne for me is an interesting one here for them to work with Trevor Lawrence out of that backfield.
Yeah, I mean that's a possible way to go. I think the other one is they got to protect. They got to protect Trevor. They want to make sure this is going to be our franchise, and I think they come back with if Radins didn't get picked, then Jenkins would be the next one from Oklahoma State, and I think offensive tackle, unless as Lucas said, Urban Meyer sits there and says, "Hey, I like the connection. I need a dink and dunk kind of guy, a little James White kind of guy, a little something that comes out of the backfield to help us out." That's a possibility, but he's our franchise, Joe. We got to protect this kid, and we got to find a way to bolster our offensive line and start there, and maybe they can get one in the 6'6", 320-pound from Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the offensive line there because for the same reasons that we've talked about, you can't leave that young quarterback on an island where he's getting pressured constantly. You got to do everything you can, and that's why I agree with what the Giants are doing this year. Build all that skilled talent, and then try to build the offensive line, and then say, this year, I mean, if you don't do it this year, Daniel, we're not picking up that option. We got to go somewhere else because you can't lock yourself into mediocre talent at a premium price. So, certainly an option here.
And that's the same territory you begin to venture in with Baker Mayfield as the Cleveland Browns pick at number 26.
Yep.
They need a little bit of help at linebacker. They haven't really filled the void. They have Mack. I believe they have Mack there right now. But when Joe Sherbert left, that was a hole to fill. You have a great edge rusher and you have a great pass rusher in Myles Garrett. A little defensive line help there because they've really bolstered up the offensive line. A guy a couple of those Miami guys right here to flip onto the side
I
of
think
Myles
two
Garrett.
two edge guys could go right here on there.
Yeah, so do I, because edge is one of the
and
things that they
the
want.
Browns and the Ravens, because there haven't been a lot of edges
Correct.
picked, and they're there is depth there.
I agree.
Again, the talent is kind of you're not sure how they're going to play. They're obscenely their traits are obscene. You've got Owe, you've got Ojulari.
I
You've
think
got
the kid
Phillips.
Russo comes to
I
mind.
think
got Gregory
I feel like
Russo.
Russo
6'6",
and Garrett just
260.
screams right
But
now.
I think Joe's right with Cleveland and Baltimore on these next two. Possibly Buffalo when you get down to number 30. They might be looking for an edge guy too. But I definitely think Cleveland and Baltimore, and especially with them losing their player to the Patriots, which was kind of big. And so they could go a host of ways here. But definitely either Russo, Phillips, another kid that was from Miami as well. The kid from Georgia, as you said, Penn State.
As well
So there's 4 or 5 guys there that they could sit back.
And
I
this
think
is when
Cleveland,
those edge
Baltimore
guys
do
are
it.
going to start going. So those two teams, they're going to go edge again, whether it's Owe, Ojulari, Phillips, Rousseau. It's going to be, again, whatever flavor, whatever guy you think. The pro days have weighed out there. Phillips had some traits better than Rousseau, and then Rousseau had some traits better than Phillips.
Right.
And so, again, the tough thing here on these pro days, just at the combines, is you're judging things that, it's great that you can do a 3-cone drill, and you're a big dude and you can do it under 7 seconds.
I want to see up against guys. I want to see quarterbacks throwing against guys. I want to see linebackers hitting guys. I want to see running backs juking
you
out
bench
guys.
press 35, 225, 35 times, but you got to push a guy around, and you got to get past him, or he's got to prevent you from getting past him.
And you got to be able to analyze it when they tech stunt, and you got to still block down on a linebacker coming through, or DN switching up. So a lot of that comes into play more than just the brute strength and the physical ability.
So no one, when you get on these, we had put 4 names there for 2 spots.
Yeah.
It's your pick.
Yeah.
It's really
It's
whoever.
open. Yeah.
It's somebody looks at it and says, I like this guy because I talked to him and I think, he's got a better motor. He's, this is the guy we're going to go for. But they're all within, on these big boards. People think like, wow. But a lot of times it's like a tenth of a point is distinguishing one player from another.
Yep.
I mean, you run a 4.42 and the next guy runs a 4.45. It means nothing.
That three times that doesn't mean it doesn't mean much at that level. It comes down to the ability to how much is the difference in the mental makeup and the analyzation in between that short span of time. Is that person better than them? And I guess
listen, I got my pick at 10, Joe, and I knew what I wanted with the Cowboys. We got the Saints on the clock, and this is Lucas's team right here at number 28 after Baltimore going 27. And cornerback, wide receiver, and even an edge rusher are the 3 needs that the draft has talked about. But I'm going to go with Lucas here because he knows the Saints like the back of his hand. So, Lucas, where would you go here?
Well, there's cap purgatory and there's cap hell, and we sit at the very, very base of cap hell right now.
Okay.
So,
and the Saints are the poster boy for they're the poster boy for the Michael Felger philosophy of the cap is crap.
It doesn't exist for us.
It doesn't exist. Every year we just put that money into the future. So next year,
Mickey Loomis. Mickey Loomis is doing his thing, and we have Alvin Kamara. I really am excited to see what Jameis Winston can do. Do you add a weapon for him here, wide receiver with Terrence Marshall from LSU? It's a possibility. I really think I think you stay away from the Rondale Moore because Deontay Harris already provides you that short speedster.
Okay.
I really liked what Deontay Harris did throughout last year, and to give him another year here, the kid from Assumption, I think he can do a lot. Traquan Smith's been inconsistent. You get a healthy Michael Thomas back. I'm not too worried about the weapons that Jameis or Taysom Hill's going to have because Taysom Hill's a weapon on his own, even if he's not playing quarterback.
It's better when he's not playing quarterback.
I
to
personally
be frank
believe
with you.
Marcus Williams and Trayvon Morgan's still on the board, but you just franchise tagged Marcus Williams. You have an edge rusher in Cameron Jordan, but you have Demario Davis. You just lost Alex Anzalone, who was a cheap linebacker. I like Nick Bolton out of Missouri. You could put 2 stud linebackers in there to stuff the run because you just lost Sheldon Rankins as a defensive tackle. You lost some of your defensive tackle depth. There's not a lot of defensive tackles in the board.
So Nick
here.
Bolton and maybe Zaven Collins, another one from Tulsa. He's 35th on the board.
Yeah, and I have Nick
260.
Bolton here. His
Bolton's 33. Yeah, he runs 4.6 and
yeah,
he's
4.59.
yeah.
He did the 3 Conan 7.4.
Pretty solid.
24 bench press, vertical jump 32 inches. Not stupendous, but short shuttle of 450. So not bad. I think certainly it's certainly not a bad pick here at all to go with Nick Bolton out of Missouri.
Yep.
So then it brings us to the Green Bay Packers, who were Aaron Rodgers unwilling to restructure his contract. That debacle continues in the rough, rocky relationship between A-Rod and the Packers. Not spending a whole lot in free agency. Where do you see the Packers going? Because they protect Aaron pretty well. You have a great weapon in Devontae Adams, but you don't really have anybody outside of Devontae Adams. And there's pieces a little bit here or there that obviously you can improve at. They re-signed Aaron Jones. That was one of the bigger things. Where do you see the Green Bay Packers
I think
going?
it's Vera Tucker. I think they go Southern Cal, offensive tackle. Get Aaron Jones. You just sign him, get him running the ball. Keep protecting Rodgers, and then maybe find a couple of receivers to go with to help him later on in second, third, or fourth, or wherever they can find them.
Yeah, you can't burn a first-round pick on a receiver here.
So I think that would be the way I would go with Vera Tucker out of Southern Cal. 6'4", 315, pretty good size guy. Because if he doesn't go there, I think KC or Tampa jumps on that kid at 31 and 32.
You can't have that.
And
the rich cannot get richer.
Yeah,
like
you don't
that.
want that. Well, look at Kansas City. Kansas City wants to get an offensive lineman.
Yeah,
They definitely want that.
And they
you
have
can add
to.
Vera
And they
Tucker
have
to.
after,
So if you
adding,
put him
after
on-
adding a guy that they had added from the Patriots.
Yeah. I mean, the one that falls after that is Leatherwood from Alabama, 6'6", 312. He's the 39th on our board. But, I think, and even Sam Cosme from Texas, he's 37th on the board, 6'7", 309. So
Yeah, he's an interesting one.
those guys there, I think Green Bay, Kansas City, and Tampa could reach for those three guys right there, the 34th, the 37th, and the 39th on our board at offensive tackles, unless they see something from an edge rusher that hasn't been picked up yet.
Because Rashawn Gary's been pretty good for them as well.
Yeah.
And then you have the Smith brothers, the Preston and Zadarius Smith have been, very good as linebackers, very good providing edge rush. Something about Rondale Moore screams out to me here. It's tough for me to see the Packers taking a receiver with that first-round pick.
Yeah, 5'9",
but
180.
But Devontae Adams provides you with that vertical threat.
Yeah.
And he's a very good contested catcher.
Slot guy.
If you add a slot guy underneath, you've never really seen. I mean, Jordy Nelson was, a very, very unique type that Rodgers had. But Rodgers with an explosive weapon like that, it reminds me of Tyreek Hill a little bit.
5'9", 180, runs a 4.29.
It gives
bad.
it's, but I don't see them taking it.
Yeah, I mean,
I see them trading down maybe
Yeah.
to do so, but at 29 as it stands, you see them going with an offensive lineman unless
or
like
someone
Russo
on the
falls.
defensive side of the
Yeah,
ball.
yeah,
I mean, we're talking cornerbacks. I still on my board had Asante Samuel Jr. available, so
Yep.
you could go with that. I mean, the edge guys start to pop.
Azeez and Jalari,
Pop
a bunch of
here.
them.
Yeah,
you know.
and I think that's where Buffalo comes available at
Yeah,
number 30.
they definitely are gonna.
They want to go
for an edge.
defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and they got to go for an edge.
Yeah, I
Chris,
think they
put
got to get
pressure on
someone
the
out there. From Russo all the way down to Basham Jr., Ronnie Perkins. There's a few guys.
Jalen Phillips.
Jalen Phillips.
We brought
Yeah.
up his name.
So there's quite a few. And when you get down to the nitty gritty and you get to the good teams, and who have to pick at the end, obviously it's pretty much more. They're good for a reason. Their skill positions are usually pretty solid, and it's how can they help in somewhere else.
And you're looking for value. You
Yes.
know, the famous the Patriots mantra has always been, you pick for value rather than for position. And so when you get down the end here, whoever's left, we're throwing a Tevin Jenkins I had for the Chiefs. That I still had him left, so give them an offensive lineman.
Yep.
Buccaneers, Jamar Johnson, he's a safety, but I mean, again, value. So what you're looking at is on those later picks is guys that kind of have dropped. guys drop every year. Some guys jump up from, they're ranked on one board at 50 and somebody's drafting them at 18.
Yeah, the biggest drop right now to me has been Farley. Farley
was
a top 10.
We could have had him in the middle there. And he
he's
could drop even until later in the first
round. Could have been the first. I mean, up there with Sertan as the first corner.
He's up at 27 right now on the big board, and he was easily top 10. So
and a guy, we put him in the middle there. But if there are cornerbacks available and people are saying, I'm going to take Asante Samuel Jr. because I don't, I can't take the risk, and he's there at the end with the Bucks or the Chiefs. I mean, somebody's going to take him down there and say you can't skip the value
because
you can't skip the value. If it's not a home run, I mean, okay, but if it is a home run, you just incrementally improved your team, and there's a reason why that top talent usually pans out, especially at some positions like quarterback. And when you're drafting cornerbacks in the top 5 or 6, they usually pan out. You don't get many busts. So I think that really took us, through the entire list of teams, 32 picks, and it's a lot of fun.
You got a sleeper one, Joe, before we call this one in 20 mock draft? Is there something that really stands out to you? You say, I really think this is going to happen right here?
Well, remember, we didn't talk about any running backs aside from Lucas's, speculating there on a guy like Etienne, who's way down at like 42, ranked 42. So Najee Harris, not even part of our discussion here. And it's the value of the position. Sure. So running back has become a position that, you can find a lot of guys somewhere else. They're only going to genuinely last 3 or 4 years. You get an offensive tackle, they might last 10, 12, 15. Quarterback the same. Wide receivers, 8, 10 years. So running backs, drop down. So a guy like Najee Harris, is he going to slip into the end of that first round somewhere where a team says that he's good value?
Great minds are thinking alike right here, Lucas, because I this is exactly what I was going to talk about, and Joe beat me to the punch because he was the name that I was brought up, and a team like Buffalo could really pick on someone like him, no doubt about it, on their team. Even Jacksonville on their second time around at 25.
And I think Buffalo is the team.
And I'm like,
simply because, Chris, they had a terrible running game last year.
did.
It was Devin Singletary. Zach Moss became the guy, and it looked like Moss was proceeding forward. But it's hard to look at a guy like Etienne, or hard to look at a guy like Najee Harris and compare him up to Zach Moss and not see the slam dunk. But you take a guy in the 3rd round, you take another running back in the 4th round in those years, you got to get something out of them, and it might be their year now, or they might, make the move. But you look a little bit further down the board for running backs. Trey Sermon from Ohio State, he can throw his weight around very well. That is someone who runs very hard. I know Najee Harris is probably the premier power back out of that set, that he's shown more of his pass ability. But for a guy that you can take a shot on later on, once it comes around to it, especially for goal line sets, so Trey Sermon catches my eye as a guy that can.
I think the guys that I think a guy like Najee Harris has a chance. Maybe Etienne has a chance at the end of the first round, simply because they can be 3 down backs, and the NFL has gotten to a point where, you got guys who are 2 down backs, and then your 3rd down back comes in, and so because of it, it's very hard to disguise what you're going to do. You bring in James White. You do run the ball, but it's not quite the same. You don't bring him in on 1st down. You bring him in on 1st down, the team, the opponent right away is saying, you've got him in a single back formation. The quarterback's under center. This is play action. You're not giving the ball to James White to run between the tackles. Yeah. You bring him in on 3rd down on a 3rd and 6th. Tom Brady was an expert. He would audible and let him run the ball when there was a light box. Mm-hmm. But generally, you're not running the ball. You're throwing the ball. So you when you have that guy who can be a 3rd down back, who can catch balls out of the backfield, and that's what they showed yesterday on his pro day. Najee Harris, by the way, he was out there catching passes, and there was a reason why he was doing that. One, nice for Mac Jones.
I think he's going to get picked right up, probably anywhere between maybe 22 all the way to 32.
But if he doesn't get picked up at the end there, then you look at you go back to Jacksonville with the top pick in the second round.
Yeah. Sure.
Is that where Etienne goes, or is that where Najee Harris goes? Mm-hmm. I would go with Harris simply because he's a bigger, more powerful back, and he's a 3 down back. But Etienne, you got your quarterback, you got that connection. He's a little more explosive. He can be a home run hitter. I don't think I don't think it's going to go past 10 picks in round 2 until a back gets taken.
And then you look at a couple other names on there too. Wyatt Davis, the guard from Ohio State, could be a guy that might sneak up there in that first round for a team that wants to go at a guard instead of a tackle, like with Pittsburgh trying to produce more of that run game. You mentioned the running backs as well, Jabril Cox, or one of the linebackers from LSU that's set to go around there early in the second round. So definitely a couple of names there that could sneak their way up depending on the wants and needs of teams and how the draft goes earlier. And I'm sure it'll all come down to who's willing to trade up for certain players and who might sit and pick somebody else, because if they don't trade up for that quarterback, you expect it to be there. That all of a sudden changes the strategy, because a player here, a player there, all of a sudden when you're lower in the 20s and the 30s, it's 4 or 5, 6 picks of guys you had up in your board here for value that are suddenly disappearing, so you're looking at a totally different ballgame in terms of who you have to look
and
at.
So think about, I'm just going to go from 32 on a big board down here as we kind of get toward the end and wrap this up.
Yeah.
And the players that could, if you just went and said, okay, the first 32 get drafted. So with all the names that we've thrown out there, some of these names have certainly been used because you're drafting by position. Mm-hmm. But you know that when you get to the second round, Pats are drafting 47th. Anybody drafting in front of that, the top 50, if this is on their big board, these are names that are still available in that second round potentially. You've got Nick Bolton, Elijah Vera Tucker, Zaven Collins, Gregory Rousseau. These are all listed after 32. Sam Cosmi, Kadarius Toney, wide receiver. Alex Leatherwood, tackle. Chris has talked a lot about the offensive line needs. Carlos Basham, Jamar Johnson, Travis Etienne, Pat Fryermuth, Ronnie Perkins, Landon Dickerson, who, by the way, is a sleeper. Mm-hmm. He had the ACL injury, but he's a tremendous offensive lineman. If it wasn't for that, he would be definitely a first-round pick. Had the injury. De'Ami Brown, wide receiver out of North Carolina. Jabril Cox, linebacker out of LSU. Alan McNeil, another tackle, interior lineman. Jackson Carman, offensive tackle, Clemson. And Elijah Molden, a safety out of Washington. Those are all names that should be, available to teams picking right through where the Patriots are in that second round. Mm-hmm. So you can get some serious talent.
Trade down to get two of those guys and take a shot on two of them.
You can get
the teams that may trade up and miss their third round to try and get 2 impact players if they have a guy that they like.
So you talked about the Patriots. They move from 15, let's say, down to 21 and get either a late second round or maybe an early third round pick. And some of these names might still be kicking around when you get past 64. This is just the top 50. There are names here that we put into the first round, and some others that probably didn't even talk about that will get moved up for some reason, because the big boards are not what the scouts say and what the draft prognosticators always say. Every team does their own.
Well, hey, we're a month away. It's Thursday, April 29th is the first day, and it goes to Saturday, May 1st. We're already in March 31st. Can things change between now and then? Don't really see it happening, but you never know if something comes to play. But Thursday, April 29th, 8 o'clock is the NFL Draft. I always look forward to it. I know you guys do as well. A little later start this year. And what do you think about the addition of one more game in the NFL this year as we go 17 weeks instead of 16 weeks? And it definitely will have a major on fantasy football impact as well.
Records
because
as
now
well.
You have to start to think about
single season records.
Yeah, a lot of things will be happening here. So what do you think about that, Joe? Before we end this, about an extra week.
Dallas
at New England.
It's great. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's great. It's great for football fans.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
the players are not 100% on boards. No. At least some of them, but a guy like Jared Goff picks up a cool $1 million for an extra game.
Yep.
So some guys, when they're paid by the game, the way their contract was structured, an extra $1 million for Jared Goff, as if he needed it. But yeah, it's great for fans. You knew it was coming. I mean, eventually, one day, Lucas will probably live that long, but maybe you and I might be a little different. They'll get to 18 games. Yeah, it'll be 18 games, and they'll get exhibition games right now, or preseason games are of no value.
No.
teams do everything in training camp, and really the preseason games are more about just like put the bottom of your roster out there. Let's see some guys, and maybe pick up a couple guys here or there that look like they have talent. I mean, just think of a couple of years ago, the Pats, and everyone was saying, "Wow, look at Stidham. He had a great preseason, and he has looked absolutely terrible when he's played in the regular season." So you're playing against 3s and 4s and guys that are not even going to be in the league. So it's totally different. But the 17 games, again, great for fans.
Yep.
It's to Lucas's point, statistics are going to be affected. You're going to, instead of everybody throwing for 4,000 yards, they're going to throw for 5,000 yards.
Something different.
But I mean, it's all about money. Let's be fair, and for the fans. So we get to watch a little bit more, and I love football. You guys do as well. So it's good for us.
Yeah, I can't complain about more football. That's
No.
for sure.
No.
I'm sure there's a
I really like those like Tuesday 5:00 games last year. And don't be surprised when they start to push the envelope on things like that. Something like that's going to happen. Instead of having just a Monday night game, there's going to be like a Tuesday night game. They'll figure out a way on the schedule that you play Tuesday night and then you have the next week off or something like that. And there'll be football on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
And college football Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
There'll be no shortage of football for the foreseeable future. I just want to thank you guys a ton for joining me for this and giving me, the idea to present this to the viewers, and I will be sharing it out on all platforms, tagging you guys. Again, huge thanks for jumping on. Hopefully we can continue to do similar things in the future, because I'm sure this will be a hit for all the viewers as well.
2021 NFL Draft. Hope you guys enjoyed this show and the Rufus Rundown. And hopefully you'll have the same picks as we did. And keep watching on ESPN and the NFL Draft on April 29th.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Joe, it was great. Thanks a lot for everything. Lucas, a pleasure. Great job as usual. And we're signing off with you.
Thanks for guys.